Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight, we're having a presentation on chronic cough and idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis presented by Dr. Émilie Millaire. She's a pulmonologist at the Mauricie Respiratory Clinic and serves as the medical director of the Mauricie Clinical Investigation Center and the medical co-director of the first complete pulmonary readaptation program at Mauricie Respiratory Clinic. She has an extensive education in pulmonology, earning a doctorate in medicine at Laval University in Quebec, and completing a medical residency in adult pulmonology at Montreal University, and an interstitial pulmonary disease fellowship at the University Institute of Cardiology and Pneumonology of Quebec. Dr. Millaire has published clinical research at the progression of pulmonary fibrosis and interstitial lung disease. She has served and continued to serve as a principal investigator in pulmonary fibrosis clinical research.
Thank you for the kind introduction. I am very happy to join you tonight to talk about the CORAL trial. And for that, I would like to thank Trevi and the CPFF's team for inviting me. It really is a pleasure to talk about research opportunities in pulmonary fibrosis in 2024, because we are indeed in a very exciting period where there are so many promising clinical trials that have the potential to maybe change how we treat pulmonary fibrosis in the next few years. There are indeed current clinical trials that hopefully may not only delay progression, but maybe even stop it. There is hope for that. And there are clinical trials that bring hope also to not only relieve cough associated to pulmonary fibrosis, but maybe to do it with less side effects. I am really glad to be here tonight, virtually with you, because every day in my practice, I treat patients living with pulmonary fibrosis, and every single day, my patients and we face some unmet needs in pulmonary fibrosis treatment. So 3 years ago, I was so tired to not have enough options to discuss with patients when their disease was progressing despite of standard of care that I decided to join our current research center in Trois-Rivières in the province of Quebec so that I could offer my patients clinical trials opportunities. So 3 years later, today, we currently have 10 different clinical trials that are available for my patients that are living with pulmonary fibrosis in our clinic. Some of these trials aim to develop disease-modifying treatments, and some other trials aim to develop symptoms-driven medications. Tonight, of course, the primary goal of the presentation is to talk about the CORAL trial. This is a phase IIb looking at efficacy and safety of nalbuphine in IPF-related cough. The study is currently enrolling in Canada, and we are, already eager to see its results. But really, throughout the presentation, I would really like you to keep in mind that it is really an exciting period for pulmonary fibrosis clinical research, where there are multiple clinical trials that are available for recruitment in Canada. I truly hope that those clinical trials will become more available for all Canadians, because yes, it is hard sometimes to have access to clinical trials. And that's why we're here tonight, to begin to open the discussion. So before we talk about the specifics of the CORAL trial, I just wanted to quickly review the standard of care for chronic cough, because whenever we consider entering into any clinical trial, we always must ensure that we have considered every options that are available as per standard of care. So we're going to talk about what is the standard of care for chronic cough. And then we will discuss about the previous data and currently enrolling trial regarding the use of nalbuphine. So we're going to talk about the CANAL study results, the phase 2A study, and then we're going to talk about the CORAL study. So why do we cough? I just wanted to begin by quickly reviewing some basics about cough so you understand why we do cough and why it can become a real problem for different reasons, not only because of pulmonary fibrosis. So cough is obviously a natural reflex that protects your lungs from irritants or inhalation of foreign matter or particles. When we cough, what we do is we actually inhale, then we close forcefully our vocal cords, which builds up some pressure into your lungs, and then we force the expiration because we're trying to expulse whatever thing is bugging your lungs. So there are obviously multiple reasons behind chronic cough, but every one of these conditions can potentially have the final consequence to building some kind of vicious circle where your vocal cords get irritated by this repeat sequence of clothing and building up pressure, then reopening under the expiratory pressure, which then can irritate more your vocal cords. So you will cough more, not only because of whatever disease that make you cough in the first place, but also because you have created some kind of irritation on your vocal cords. So we usually classify cough in regards of its duration because specific causes differ if the cough is acute, subacute, or chronic. So we're talking about an acute cough if it lasts less than 3 weeks, subacute if it lasts from 3 to 8 weeks, and we're talking about chronic cough if it lasts more than 8 weeks. The other thing that is important to understand is that people frequently experience more than one cause for their cough. And it is really important that we try to identify all of those causes and try to address all of those conditions separately, not only think about the pulmonary fibrosis as a cause for cough. Cough is obviously something that people with IPF might experience, often as an early sign of the disease. It is a marker of the disease progression, and about 85% of all IPF patients will suffer from chronic cough throughout their disease. The cough can be mild, but it can also be very significant, and it can obviously interfere with daily activities such as speech. And as I said, it can be mild, but it can be very serious. So individuals have different ranges of how many times they cough in a single day. So it can be from 200 to as much as 1,500 coughs in a single day. There are multiple other causes of chronic cough aside from pulmonary fibrosis, and all of which, if they become chronic, can lead to inflammation and this kind of vicious circle of irritation on the vocal cords, which then can result in further worsening of the cough. Here are some examples of the causes of chronic cough aside from pulmonary fibrosis. So your doctor will surely look for signs and symptoms of chronic rhinitis, gastroesophageal reflux disease, asthma, etc. And before considering symptomatic treatment specifically for your cough, your doctor will surely try to find all of those other causes and try to treat them specifically if applicable. So what are the treatment options for IPF and chronic cough? Unfortunately, there are currently no approved therapies for chronic cough in IPF, but surely your doctor may try various things depending on the causes he found for your cough, if there are other causes aside from pulmonary fibrosis. Your doctor might also try some antitussive agents, but unfortunately, in my experience, all of the available options are limited in terms of efficacy, and their efficacy varies a lot from one patient to another. And unfortunately, we more often experience also some side effects that can be also a problem. In IPF, obviously, we use antifibrotics very often, such as nintedanib or pirfenidone, to slow the disease progression. But unfortunately, as you probably know, those antifibrotics do not have a significant effect on cough. So there is clearly an unmet need here in trying to treat chronic cough in general, but specifically for IPF patients. So what are our options? What is the standard of care for chronic cough and for IPF-related cough? Well, first, as I said, and I will repeat myself, we really have to look for any other causes for chronic cough aside from pulmonary fibrosis to make sure that we address separately all of those conditions that we can treat sometimes quite well. So we have a look for signs and symptoms of chronic rhinitis, gastroesophageal reflux disease, asthma, etc. And then if the cough persists despite the treatment of concomitant conditions, then we favor a symptomatic treatment, which will be a similar approach as what we would do in treating idiopathic chronic cough, so a chronic cough without pulmonary fibrosis. Although there are very few evidence regarding cough treatment in IPF, the CHEST guidelines suggest that we consider the same options as for idiopathic chronic cough, which are listed here. So it surprised me actually to read that it is suggested that we consider speech therapy, which has been proven to be effective in idiopathic chronic cough. But in my experience, because it is not a readily available service, at least in the province of Quebec, we do not use it very often. I am also not aware of any evidence of its use in IPF. We can imagine, though, that it could be helpful in trying to kind of break this vicious circle of vocal cords irritations, but beyond that, it surely would be limited in terms of efficacy treating IPF-related cough. Then it is suggested in these guidelines that we consider gabapentins, which is an oral neuromodulator. It is also suggested that we could consider standard opiates. As you probably know, gabapentin and opiates are medications that can have significant side effects that limit their use. So more often than I would like, their use is limited because of their tolerance profile. Then it is suggested that we might consider clinical trials if they are available. So entering into a clinical trial, what does it mean? What does it look like? It is important to understand that there are different types and different phases of clinical trial, from phase 1 to phase 4. The CPFF's website has a very nice section about clinical trials, and if you are considering entering into any clinical trial, and if it is your first time, I really encourage you to visit the CPFF website section about clinical trials. There is also an educational webinar on the subject, and if you are interested, I really encourage you to watch it. So as I said in the introduction, when we treat IPF patients in 2024, we always consider two major objectives: slowing disease progression, and relieving symptoms, unfortunately, as of today, at the cost of significant side effects. So we hope that new trials, as the CORAL trial that we will soon talk about, don't disconnect. Okay. So we're hoping that those new trials helps us remodel how we treat IPF-related cough. Okay, so here we are. We're going to talk about nalbuphine. We're going to talk about previous data from the phase 2A CANAL trial results, and then we're going to talk about the CORAL study. So nalbuphine is an oral drug that is classified as an opioid drug, but it is what we call an agonist-antagonist opioid drug. Okay, so this means that the drug actually antagonizes the mu opioid receptor and it agonizes the kappa receptor. And well, this is interesting because it is thought that the physical dependence that we try to avoid when we use standard opioids is linked to the mu receptors that are antagonized by nalbuphine. Okay, so in other words, nalbuphine has the potential to have the therapeutic benefits of standard opioids while minimizing side effects, while minimizing the potential for dependence. Okay, so this is what we think it will do. This is the design of the phase 2A CANAL trial. So a total of 38 IPF patients were randomized into the trial in a 1-to-1 ratio, nalbuphine versus placebo. So the dose was titrated up to a dose of 162 milligrams. The dose was titrated up to, the maximum dose on a 3 weeks period. Then we had a 2-week washout period, and then we had a crossover, another 3-week period, and then a 2-week follow-up period. And here are the results. So we clearly demonstrated a significant benefit in reducing cough by a mean of 52.5% when compared to placebo. And in my opinion, what is even more interesting is that a total of 97% of patients experienced a reduction of at least 30% of their 24-hour cough frequency. Okay, 76% of patients experienced a 50% cough reduction, and 41% of patients experienced a 75% cough reduction. Okay, so this is really significant and, in my opinion, impressive, although it is a small study, a short study. Here is the summary of what we saw in terms of side effects during the study. Okay, so the side effects are listed here. What is important to remember is that all of those side effects were mild to moderate, and they resolved quickly after the treatment was stopped. Okay, but there were side effects. I'll let you read them. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the CORAL trial. So this is a phase 2B looking at the efficacy and safety of nalbuphine in the treatment of cough related to IPF. So it is currently enrolling in Canada. We'll talk about later where are the sites that are recruiting. So we will talk in the next slides about the trial design, what you can expect if you decide to volunteer, what side effects you may experience or not, and how can you reach out to the study team if you would like to volunteer. So the goals of this trial is really to confirm the results from the previous phase 2A trial, the CANAL study. Okay, so the CANAL study results were very impressive. in my opinion at least, but it was a short trial. It was a small group of patients, okay? It was only 38 patients. So we really need to confirm those results, and that is the primary goal of this study. We also want to understand better how different doses of the study drug work to reduce cough in patients with IPF. So we're looking for IPF patients, obviously, that have experienced bothersome chronic cough. During the study, patients will be randomized into 4 different groups. One group will have the placebo, then the other 3 groups will have different doses of nalbuphine. So one group will have a dose of 27 milligrams, 54 milligrams, and 108 milligrams. So remember that the maximum dose in the CANAL trial was 162 milligrams. So the maximum dose here is less than the maximum dose that was used in the phase 2A trial. So 3 out of 4 patients will receive nalbuphine, and 1 out of every 4 participants will receive placebo. The treatment period will be 6 weeks, and the whole study period will be about 12 weeks. And during the trial, there will be approximately 6 in-person visits on site. The study will also pay for your transportation cost to ensure that this would not be a limitation for you to participate in the trial. Okay. So what are the benefits and what are the risks to participate in this trial? So, well, you could obviously gain access to a new drug for cough that has the potential to relieve chronic cough associated to IPF with maybe less side effects than what we know about standard opioids. You might as well also contribute to improving future IPF treatments for other patients. And what we can assure you is that you will have a closer medical follow-up than you would usually have in the standard clinic. It is still a clinical trial, though, so you may experience some side effects that we currently do not know about. It is still a possibility. What is reassuring, though, is that nalbuphine has been tested in over 1,000 people around the world in different conditions, and the most common side effects that are associated with nalbuphine have been, well, they tend to be mild to moderate. They tend to resolve quickly when we stop the drug, and we're talking about nausea, vomiting, sometimes constipation, dizziness, or mild headache, sleepiness. So those kind of side effects are usually what we see when we use standard opioids, but we tend to not see them as severe as we would see them in using standard opioids. Okay. So why should I join the CORAL trial? So as with all trials with new therapies, there is obviously no guarantee that treatment will work for you. However, as we saw from the phase 2A CANAL trial results, nalbuphine has shown to reduce chronic cough by 75% in participants with IPF in this trial. And as we said, there is an unmet need in treating chronic cough associated with IPF. So it is interesting to contribute to moving forward with this trial. So the study team really want me to reassure you that there are no costs in participating in the trial, and you may be eligible for your travel cost to be covered also. So here is the list of the participating sites in Canada. So I'm sorry, the study team had updated this slide. I'm sorry, I forgot to put on the updated slides. But there are currently 3 sites that are open for recruitment, 1 in Ajax and 2 in Vancouver. There will be another site that is coming soon in Trois-Rivières, which is my site. So we're not open as of today for recruitment, but we will soon be in the next weeks or month. As of today, the only 3 sites that are open for recruitment are in Ajax and in Vancouver. So how can you participate in the trial? So here's the website if you would like to volunteer, www.coalcoughtrial.com. You will have to answer a few questions to check if you qualify for the trial. Then if you do qualify, a nurse will call you and ask you a few more questions. Then if you still qualify, you will be scheduled for a site visit. So this concludes what I had to tell you tonight. I hope I fulfilled the objectives that were given me by Trevi and the CPFF team. I'm sure you have some questions. I will be happy to answer them to the best of my knowledge. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Millaire. Anybody who has a question, please feel free to put in the comment section. Currently, I do have a few questions that people have sent in. Dr. Millaire, you have said in your presentation that naltrexone is an opioid. So a lot of people are wondering, is there a risk of addiction?
Mm-hmm.
And how long can a patient be on this without taking maybe a medical vacation to it to avoid addiction?
Mm-hmm. So it is indeed an opioid drug, but as I said, and I'll try to re-explain it, it is an agonist-antagonist opioid. So we think we are agonizing the opioid receptors that relieve pain and cough, and it is thought that the drug antagonizes the opioid receptors that are causing the dependence. Okay, so it is thought that we would have the benefits of cough relieving and relieving the pain without having the troubles of physical dependence. Okay, so this is the physiology that is speaking. So we also want to remind us that this is still a trial. This is still a phase 2B trial. So this is the physiology that is reassuring about this, but we still have to confirm this physiology theory.
Okay, thank you. Because it's a controlled substance, do you think it will be difficult? Because the Canadian Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation, we regularly advocate for new drug treatments to be on the provincial formulary plan, but we're concerned that if it's a controlled substance, there might be stricter regulations about, being prescribed, and also for people who are looking for opioids, maybe they would try to steal this drug.
Well, I might not be the best person to answer these questions. Surely there are concerns about that, and surely there will be steps after an eventual phase 3 might be positive. Well, if it is positive, surely there are some steps that will have to be made with the authorities, but I might not be the best person to answer this question. If someone in Trevi's team has something to say about that, feel free to join.
Yeah, great, thank you. As someone has said on the comment section, many patients, if you noticed when you did the introduction, they have a chronic cough because of this disease, and no one seems to understand, why and where. And so what do you think this drug will do for the future for patients with a chronic cough? What does it look like? Do you think it will eliminate it totally for everyone, or will it only work for, some, but not for everyone?
That's an interesting question. I will answer by talking about IPF patients. Okay, so in my practice, every day I prescribe opioid drugs to try to relieve IPF-related coughs. Okay, so every day I try to use the smaller doses of opioid drugs so that I can have even a small effect on their cough without causing them some side effects and some dependence, which is really something that we have to be careful about when we're using standard opioids. I hope that if we have this phase 2b trial that confirms the phase 2a trial, then I hope that we will have a phase 3 trial that will confirm those results. If it still confirms that there is no dependence issue, surely it will replace the opioid that we currently use every day treating IPF-related cough.
Okay. Well, somebody in the audience has said that IV form of nalbuphine is not a controlled substance in most countries, but you're talking about this in a pill form, correct?
Yes, it is an oral drug with an extended release, but it is a pill.
Okay, that's great. And can you explain why, for this phase of the clinical trial, why is your highest dose still lower than the previous one? Because you said the highest dose was only 108, whereas the other one was 162.
So I was not in the medical team that did the design of the study, but what I find interesting in that decision is that when we look closer into the phase 2a results, there were, I think, 8 or 9 patients that dropped out because of side effects. So this is still significant. Feel free to correct me, someone in Trevi's team, if I'm not correct, but this is what I remember. And this is still less than what we see in current practice. Okay, so every day I prescribe standard opioids, and every day more than a half of my patients stop those opioids because of side effects. So even if we're talking about 8 to 9 people that dropped out the study because of side effect in the phase 2a trial, it is still less than what I see in my practice. But still, so we had some mild to moderate side effect in the phase 2a, but we really had an impressive efficacy result, in my opinion. So I believe we're trying to have a look at different doses. Maybe if we're using a dose that is 50% of what we use in the CANAL trial, maybe we will have an efficacy that is still very positive for patients without having those dropouts. So this is my opinion, but I wasn't on the medical team that designed the trial.
Okay, so speaking of side effects, one of the things that's been noted is that sleepiness could be a side effect of this treatment. So if you're on this clinical trial with this drug treatment, does that mean you cannot drive or operate machinery while you're on this treatment, or what does that look like?
So I would answer with what I say every day to my patients when I begin a new opioid drug. So every time you use a new dose of an opioid or any sedative drug, the first day, the first few days, yes, do not drive. Okay, until you know how you feel with the drug, how it affects you. And there are some cue timings during the trial that we know that the drug will come up. It is always because it's a twice daily dose. It's a twice daily drug, and the dose increase always happens at nighttime. Okay, so you will feel the sedation if you feel it during the night when the dose increase. Okay, so what I will say to patient is really pay attention when you're beginning the drug. How do you feel in the first day? How do you feel in the first few days? Don't drive in the first day, and see how you feel, then we'll adjust.
Okay. You were talking about the clinical trial, how, the patients who volunteer will be reimbursed for their travel.
Mhm.
How long does it take for them to go to the clinic and do the testing and everything? Because a lot of people don't understand until they sort of look at our webinar that we had hosted about 2 years ago, is that it's a commitment, right? For this clinical trial, it's only about 6 to 8 weeks, so that's tolerable. Is
Mhm.
that once a week? And if it's once a week, is it 2 hours? Is it 3 hours? Because a lot of people who want to take participation will have to take time off from work, right? And that would be a loss of income and everything. And so, a
Mhm.
lot of people will say, well, if I lose income, well, can I be compensated for that? Because it's very hard to, especially these days with inflation and the cost of food and everything, to be
Mhm.
able to do this and not get paid. Because sometimes your employer will say, yes, you can take the time off, but no, we're not going to pay you.
Mhm. So I believe this is one of the strengths of this design. So we're talking about a short trial. It is a 12-week long trial with approximately 6 in-person visit on site. I have looked at all the visit schedules, and I believe the visit would take something in between 2 to 3 hours per visit. Okay, but this is really my guesstimate. Okay, so this is what you can expect. Now, how much will the team reimburse you for your time travel? That I cannot answer for them, but at least for the time visit, somewhere in between 2 to 3 hours per visit.
Okay, great. And was there any other side effects you want to note it for this audience? Because I know that you had said that there were several people who dropped out from the
Yeah,
first
yeah,
phase. Yeah.
no, yeah. So if you want me to repeat some of the most significant side effects, so we're talking about nausea, vomiting, constipation, so things that we would see when we're using standard opioids. So nausea, fatigue, constipation, sleepiness, headaches that tends to be mild most of the time. But the thing that we really have to keep in mind is that this tends to be mild to moderate. And when you stop the drug, those side effects, they go away rapidly. Okay. And the other thing that you have to keep in mind whenever you're considering entering into a clinical trial is whatever the clinical trial, whatever the drug, whatever the timing in the beginning, the middle, or in the end of the trial, if you are experiencing any side effect that you feel is not worth continuing in the trial, our goal as physicians, as a team, is always your well-being, your health, so you can stop anytime during the trial for any reason, even so if you are experiencing significant side effects.
Okay. Someone just asked, how do you measure cough? Do patients need to monitor, count? How do they report it so that they know that they've actually improved?
Mhm. So we have some questionnaires to evaluate how the cough affects your quality of life and how do you perceive your cough's frequency. And we also use some cough monitors that you wear on your neck for 24 hours. It really isn't that bothering. Okay, I can reassure you. So it is a digital cough monitor that you will be wearing at few key times during the study for a 24-hour period.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask our audience, are there any more questions we have for Dr. Millaire before we thank all of you for joining us tonight? And I just want to say that this has been very fascinating, and I highly encourage everyone to look at what clinical trials are on our CPFF website so that you can come back to this webinar and see where you might want to go and participate, because as mentioned, there's a site in Ajax, there's a site at Trois-Rivières where Dr. Millaire is located, and there's two in Vancouver. So this is an opportunity for all those who really would like to see if they can get rid of their cough, it is an opportunity for you. One last question. For this trial, are you only looking for people with only IPF, or can people with connective tissue diseases that also have PF, can they participate in this?
This trial is really about cough related to IPF specifically, but there are at least one other trial that comes up in my mind, looking at another new drug trying to relieve cough related to any ILDs. So there are other trials for non-IPF pulmonary fibrosis, but the CORAL study is really for IPF patients.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. We're going to end this session. And I want to thank Dr. Millaire for your tonight. And thank you so much for this.
Thank you for inviting me.